Immigration has been a constant force in the growth of America. The ebb and flow of immigrants has changed over the decades, but the American dream has never been more idolized and desired today than it was for our ancestors. We are all immigrants. The vast majority of us had ancestors that started with literally nothing. We will reacquaint you with what their hopes, dreams, and aspirations were in realizing their own American dream. Rockford was founded in 1834-35 as two communities by New Englanders. These sons and daughters of immigrants had a restless spirit of discovery, freedom, and quest to make a new life for their families. Their quest was unrelenting and undeniable to find a community that would embrace their entrepreneurship, collaborative spirit, and fulfill their dream. They came from all walks of life and ethnicities. Two events in 1852 launched Rockford's unprecedented growth to becoming the second largest city in the state of Illinois. A pivotal moment occurred with the arrival of the railroad and construction of the Fordham Dam across the Rock River that created the water power district. The railroads were essential to Rockford's unprecedented growth. Bringing a railroad to one's community was every community's dream. That dream culminated in 1852 in the bringing the Galena-Chicago Union Railroad to Rockford. Two Rockford businessmen, John Holland and T.D. Robertson, and Chicago's William Ogden, were responsible for promoting and selling shares in the new railroad and bringing it to Rockford. At that time, Rockford was at the edge of civilization. Galena was the largest city in Illinois, and the Mississippi River was a major trade route. Because of Rockford's proximity to the land grab for farming, the arriving entrepreneurs saw a vast opportunity in the manufacture of farm implements. John Manning's refinement of his reaper served as the foundation for Rockford's industrial future. The railroad served as a supply line of endless immigrants to fuel these emerging industries. In 1852, Rockford was the furthest west you could travel by rail. These initial immigrants established a foothold that attracted even more friends and families from the mother country, hoping for a new start and realizing the American dream. These relationships offered comfort, security, and the same language, and a temporary roof over their head. Rockford's ethnic journey started with the influx of Irish who built the railroads. The potato famine of 1845-52 in Ireland began the European exodus. Dire economic circumstances in Scandinavia, Italy, and Germany, and the Americas' open-door policy to immigration accelerated the enrooting of families. By the 1920s, Rockford was 40% Swedish and a dominant force in the furniture industry. Today, Rockford is of more German descent than Swedish. One of the most influential industrialists was Ralph Emerson. He sought out Rockford after seeing so many advertising for the Manning Reaper Company in Chicago. He too was impressed by the ability of Rockford to self-finance the Fordham Dam project and that no East Coast financing was involved. In 1852, he had opened up a hardware store, and John Manning was a customer. In those days, buying on credit was a normal way of doing business. Emerson, seeing a great opportunity, offered Manning to pay him in stock certificates instead of cash. The relationship and trust in each other's skills resulted in an unprecedented growth for Rockford's agricultural industry and subsequent industries that resulted and grew. In 1855, Manning decided to exhibit the Reaper in Paris, France. It was a big hit, and even Napoleon III purchased one. It was the beginning of Rockford's impact of doing business internationally. These men left their imprint on many varied businesses as inventors, investors, and supporters for decades to come. They encouraged and created opportunities, a cross-pollination of ideas and concepts that resulted in advancement in multiple industries. They were risk-takers with unimagined foresight and organizational skill who seized upon opportunities when approached by a hopeful entrepreneur. They created an atmosphere of cooperation and enlightenment that benefited all. The Paris Exposition brought a lot of attention, including Franklin McCormick, who thought that Manning's invention violated his patent. Emerson had befriended Abraham Lincoln when he was in Bloomington, Illinois, and was instrumental in inviting Lincoln to be part of the Manning legal team that fought the patent infringement trial against McCormick. Because the trial was moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, they had to hire an East Coast lawyer, Edwin Stanton, to lead the team, who later became Lincoln's Secretary of War during the Civil War. The team successfully defended Manning's patent. Unfortunately, Manning died 2 weeks after the trial ended. Emerson and the other partner, Talcott, took over the company, and it flourished as did Rockford. Emerson had a wide variety of interests. After Lincoln's assassination, Emerson decided to establish the Emerson Institute in Mobile, Alabama, to educate slave children and honor his good friend Lincoln. That school was the beginning of the Mobile public school system. His daughter was the founder of the Keith Country Day School here in Rockford. The Water Power District offered a stable of job shops, foundries, and mill shops for lumber and flour, and plenty of power to operate crude machinery. Whatever you built could be transported by rail anywhere. The marketplace was an endless opportunity. The Manny Reaper established Rockford's reputation for quality products and reliability. The demands for farm equipment was unprecedented, and Rockford's proximity to the growing farmland in the adjacent states only fueled more growth and innovation to meet the demand. The expansion of the farm industry played a role in launching Rockford's seed industry. We had the three largest seed companies in Illinois. Buckbee Seed alone farmed 15,000 acres and had 350,000 square feet of greenhouses. It took a lot of immigrants to work the fields and propagate the seeds. In 1871, Rockford's furniture industry took root with the construction of Central Furniture in the Water Power District. That same year, the Chicago fire wiped out Chicago's entire furniture industry. Rockford was poised to not only meet the need to supply much-needed furniture goods, but it also seized the moment to expand its production to meet the need. Rockford's Swedish immigrants had brought unprecedented skills in carpentry. They also brought a new model of entrepreneurship with the creation of 40 worker-owned furniture factories. By 1925, Rockford had become the second largest furniture manufacturer in the country, behind Grand Rapids, Michigan. P.A. Peterson had immigrated from Sweden and arrived here penniless. He would walk miles each day from the farm to the city without shoes, so as not to wear out the soles for work. He became one of the most admired and trusted businessmen in the beginning of the 20th century. His word was a gold standard. His involvement in over 40 companies was so impactful that bankers didn't need a signature on a loan. His word was good enough. He saved many troubled companies from failure with his business acumen and faith in people's abilities to succeed. The development of Rockford's knitting industry was the product of John Nelson's invention of the seamless sock knitting machine. Rockford had over 60% of the nation's market share of men's woolen socks by the 1920s. The industry employed over 4,500 people, mostly women, in the knitting district. The only remnant of that industry is what is now the Embassy Suites Hotel. The Water Power District was a hotbed of invention and innovation, with these industrial shops stacked so closely together. If you needed something made, your neighbor could help you out. Everything was at your fingertips. Rockford had a national reputation, and if you wanted to build your invention, the Water Power was the place to make it happen. It attracted the Woodwards, the Greenlee brothers, W.F. and John Barnes, Ingersoll, Sundstrom, and Howard Coleman. These were the giants that had humble beginnings in the water power. They too had hopes, dreams, and an idea. Rockford offered unprecedented opportunity to fulfill that American dream. Amos Woodward was working for N.C. Thompson, who was manufacturing the Manny Reaper. He was constantly disappointed in the inconsistency of the water power caused by drought or flooding conditions. He created a solution with the development of the governor. It was a flyball sensing mechanism that maintained the same water flow, no matter what the volume available. It spawned a whole new company that 140 years later is now a world-renowned aerospace company. Cleveland's Winthrop Ingersoll had heard about Rockford and its water power district and its class of mechanics. He too was looking for more opportunities. His metal cutting tool business transformed into building milling machines to make even bigger machines at a scale no one in the world did. The Greenlee brothers came from Chicago. They had heard about the quality of Rockford's workforce and the craftsmen that worked here. It offered a work ethic and loyalty to a company that was enviable. Greenlee became synonymous with the highest quality of woodworking and machine tools. First-generation immigrants were the backbone of that workforce. John Barnes created a pedal-operated jigsaw to make his job easier, faster, and of better quality. Word of invention spread throughout the water power. The requests were overwhelming to build more of these little job savers. A company was born, with strong encouragement from his boss. This was the culture of supporting one another, collaborating, sharing ideas, and helping one another to achieve the impossible. Howard Coleman came to Rockford because he had heard of the highly skilled shops in the water power. The Spengler brothers were Swiss immigrants that were watchmakers by training. They had a small job shop that offered specialized skills to create these new inventions that were being developed. These job shops were the secret sauce of what the water power district offered. Their precision machining skills contributed to the development of Coleman's drawing-in machine that was essential for his breakthrough. Howard Coleman was a relentless tinkerer. Failure was not an option for him. He was driven like no other to achieve his dream of eventually automating the feeding of threads into a loom. His hand knot revolutionized the textile industry. For 10 years, his product had no peers. Barbara Coleman became synonymous with the highest quality and reinforced Rockford's reputation that was stretching around the world. It took Howard 30 years to develop and perfect his high-speed warper. His dream of automating his DIM resulted in controlling 85% of the market and revolutionizing the textile industry. The clothing you wear today was made affordable because of his perseverance. He was our Thomas Edison. His experimentation with radio waves resulted in that garage door opener you use every day. His electronic temperature controls became industry standards. The complicated gearing that was necessary for his DIM machine resulted in a whole new division. He was also an early innovator in 1926 with the multiplex telegraphy. At the time, he was working with IBM and the development of what we know today as the computer. If he hadn't been killed in an auto accident, what impact could he have had on the advancement of that computer? He was a visionary that impacted our community and the world that was unimaginable. In 1926, the Rockford Milling Machine Company, owned by Oscar Sundstrand and Ed Cedarleaf, merged with the Rockford Tool Company that had been founded by immigrants Levin Faust, Elmer Leshaff, and Swan Anderson. The merger formed the Sundstrand Machine Tool Company. These Swedish immigrants were the founders of what became one of the most impactful aerospace suppliers in the world. Another transformative event was the attracting the Illinois Central Railroad to Rockford. In 1884, Rockford leaders had heard of the IC's intent to build through Stillman Valley. Judge William Brown and his son Edward Brown invited the Sturtevant Fish and the railroad president and E.T. Jeffrey, the railroad's general manager, to his home in Haight Village for dinner. Rockford's leading industrialists were in attendance to make their pitch as to why Rockford should be selected to expand their railroad operations. That same night, the Illinois Central Railroad committed to building its rail line to Rockford. What occurred shortly after was the creation and development of the Southeast Factory District that encompassed 650 acres for industrial development. It developed a 3.2-mile rail loop that had 90 miles of railroad spurs and siding to every factory site. Back in those days, it was like bringing the interstate system to your back door. This transportation system gave Rockford a nationwide market for the goods that it produced. The impact of that decision that occurred over dinner was absolutely transformative for Rockford's industry for the next 75 years. Not only did it supply raw materials and the shipping of finished products, but it also served to supply its industries with an inexhaustible supply of immigrants that were its workforce. These leaders were risk-takers, visionaries who provided opportunities, and had an unwavering faith in others to fulfill the American dream for so many of their fellow immigrants. I'm a second-generation Swedish immigrant. Both my parents' mother and fathers came through Ellis Island. My mom's mother, Esther Ebarp, was from Nordmaling, Sweden, and immigrated when she was 23, and arrived here in 1923 on the steamship Drottningholm. This is the travel trunk that contained all of her worldly belongings. She was the third eldest and the first of her 13 siblings to come to America. She knew no one. Her destination was Chicago, where she found work as a domestic caring for households. She came to Rockford in 1924, met my grandfather, and in 1925 my mother was born. My grandmother became a milliner and made stylish women's hats for Rockford's wealthy. She earned money to help bring her brothers and sisters to America. After my mother was born in January 1925, my grandmother left 1 month later to go to Sweden and escort 2 brothers and a sister and her father on the SS Stockholm through Ellis Island and then on to Chicago. On another such crossing, with the three sisters coming on their own, one of the sisters arrived ill at Ellis Island. She was rejected and had to make the journey back to Sweden. Ultimately, three brothers and three sisters settled in Chicago, and another sister joined my grandmother here in Rockford. It took my grandmother 53 more years to become a U.S. citizen, and she told me it was the proudest moment of her entire life. My grandfather arrived at Ellis Island in 1910 on the steamship Umbria. He arrived at Ellis Island as Patrick Pearson and changed his last name to Ebarp. He just wanted to distinguish himself from the rest of the arriving Swedes. On my father's side, his parents were from Stockholm. His father was 4 when he came over on the Lloyd steamer Rabbi and arrived at Ellis Island in October of 1885. He became a naturalized citizen in 1923 here in Rockford. My father was the youngest of 9 children born in 1925. In 2008, my wife, Carol, and I traveled to Sweden as part of the Rockford contingent to promote economic development. Linnea Bankston was the sister city business liaison between Lidköping and Rockford for 10 years. She invited us to stay a night with her parents on that last night we were in Sweden. That evening, the family was celebrating Linnea's sister's 21st birthday and included friends and relatives. It was a magical evening. The conversation with the family was no different than with my family. Being total strangers evaporated in minutes. I was struck by their mannerisms and facial expressions. They were just like my mom's family of aunts and uncles. I had discovered the origin of my roots. It was an instant bonding of friendship and curiosity that continues to this day. We had so much in common. It was an incredible experience of recognizing my own roots and where I had come from. Rockford's ethnic groups were very segregated in this melting pot of immigrants. For the most part, each had their own residential neighborhood, could still speak their own native language, and utilize their own ethnic grocery store, bakery, or meat market. The extensive ethnic social clubs in Rockford provided a means to continue their cultural traditions and build new friendships. The only opportunity to intermix with the other ethnicities was at work or at school. However, the Swedish-run furniture factories were exclusively Swedish. They were very discriminatory in their hiring practices. Fortunately, jobs were plentiful, and skillful people were highly sought after. Owning your own home was an American dream for these immigrants, and Rockford offered that kind of opportunity. By the 1950s, over 80% of Rockford's homes were occupied by their owners. The flood of immigrants who came to this country was enhanced by the experiences, successes, and opportunities that each shared in letters to friends and family in the old country. For many, the American dream was coming true, and it was a promising new way of life. One's hopes and aspirations and fulfilling one's dreams could all come true in America, and Rockford offered great opportunities.